Okay. Let me just make sure that it's streaming to LinkedIn because that's the most important
Ah, yes, indeed. Hence it being about work and
one.
whatnot.
Yeah. All right, cool. For that. Okay. Sweet. We are good. Let me figure out what window I'm supposed to be on again because I have 4 million of these open at the same
There you
time
go.
now.
4 million is quite a lot. You got
It's
to get some automations on there.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm doing next week with Irina Kukuyeva, another great mentor. We're going to go through all the processes and try to figure out how we can make some of this a little bit more automated and fun. All right,
I
cool.
can definitely help with that too. Because
Hell
that's
yeah.
I think that's going to be quite a bit of a surprise when people learn that I'm actually not no longer the chief of staff and what I've evolved into. That can also be fun conversations.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. We'll get into that. Okay, cool. So, Claus, welcome. Everyone that's tuning in on LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook. I forget them all the time, even though I do this every week. Welcome. If you'd like to ask questions, post them in the text chat. I will pass them on to Lyla, and we'll get some answers, feedback, insight, and advice for you. That's the other one, advice. And those of you that are here, Boyne, Claus, on Start Mata, raise your hand or use the text chat to let me know that you want to come up on stage where you can use your microphone and camera to have a conversation. With that, please introduce yourself.
Hey there, my name is Lyla Skovgaard, and I'm actually currently the Chief Innovation Officer over at Dreammore AI. I started off, as my title is showing, as Chief of Staff. As is the nature of startups, we oftentimes need to evolve, so that's part of that situation there. I've actually been doing project management for over 15 years now. Project and product are a little bit interchangeable depending on how you want to tweak things, and a good finagler is always ready to tweak. So, with that said, I have been applying my years of experience managing various teams of engineers, working through many different circles, from government to private sector. And I've done a lot of work with sustainability specifically. So, red tape is definitely not something I'm afraid of. A lot of sustainability, especially in California, is essentially you're an attorney, understanding how to communicate legally and pushing forward sort of the good fight becomes more of a legal battle. So that's always been fun as well. I've done many different things, from starting my own businesses to right now with my co-founder Anne Marie. We're getting into the AI space, but in a little bit of a different way. So that's the intro for me.
I love it. It's great and it's touching on a lot of interesting background. But we were talking about what's literally in the background of your camera shot with the stop motion. And I'm curious, as far as like the background of your upbringing with project management, is it rooted in creating with stop motion and animation, or is that something you picked up more recently?
So I've always had a love of video games, imagination, creativity, and the arts have been where my heart has always been. However, I was scientifically inclined, meaning that I did very well with mathematics and science and data driven information. And so it was kind of more pushed on me as the logical choice, because nobody wanted a starving artist for a daughter. No, my parents weren't terrible. They're actually hippies from Northern California. It wasn't even about that. But it seemed the logical route. But in the background, so my metric, even as a kid, because I love stats, was find the job where the metric is this: make the most amount of money, spend the least amount of time and the least amount of effort, so that you can do the fun things. Because I never wanted anyone to infringe upon my creativity and tell me how to create, because then I felt that would be the death of said creativity. So in the background, which is always, I have my day job, and my night job at night was always a narrative design and world building, so level design. And my partner, who's in stop motion, actually got me into stop motion. You can see a little bonehead is what his creation is, and that's another project on the side is Bonehead. Um, and it's a dope little character who I think we can all relate to, and that's kind of. But yeah, I've definitely worked at indie studios coming down here in LA, and so it's been very fun.
I love it. This is something like I've had many conversations with. My background's in photography. I went to school for that, and in high school, when I was learning photography, I started managing my friend's band because I was always photographing them, and they
Nice.
didn't really understand, or care about the business side of, art. But it was such like a common thing with any sort of artist where it's like, okay, if I want to do this professionally as a career or build a business around this, I don't want to be a sellout. And especially when you're younger, it's always this pushback. Oh, they're sellouts. They're sellouts. Look, their music's in a commercial or something. It's like, if you want to do your art, like you're saying, without anyone kind of controlling that or getting in the way of that, you need to have capital to do that. It's
Yep.
what's going to allow you to just have the most freedom in being artistic. And it's interesting for you, instead of finding that balance between commercializing your creativity to fund the art side of it, you found another career path that allowed you to make a lot more money and using less of your time, opening up more freedom, both in terms of having more capital to utilize, but also having more time to utilize too, which is really interesting. I'm curious, like, are there moments when you're working with clients or an employer where you find yourself wanting to be more creative, and because of the parameters of the project, or what the company's after, brand or something like that, it's putting limitations on what you want to do creatively? And how have you been able to manage that sort of like mentality of letting go of control while trying to be creative, and like feeling ownership over that, but at the same time recognizing that, wait, it's just a job. I'm going to just do what the job requires of me and not worry about it.
That's a really great question. And I appreciate the recognition of what I'm doing here. But it's an interesting situation to where you have to decide how your mind works best. Does your mind work best dividing it and compartmentalizing it, where you're saying, this is the space, for instance, where I can be myself and that's where I can live. And then you turn on different parts of you. So if you can do well with that, bravo. I cannot. My quirkiness comes, everywhere I go, and so you kind of get the whole Lyla. And that's kind of what keeps me like a kid. I'm not a child by any means. I'm in my 40s, so it's more so this is what keeps me young, and keep pulling that out. Even in a client situation and in an advisory situation, it would actually do them and myself a disservice. So I think it's about the balance, because what you're doing here is there is an obvious ask, and this is what's funny, what we're also doing with the Dream More AI, and what I would say good AI use should look like is by identifying really what people want. Sometimes you don't even know yourself, like, what do you want? And that's kind of the soft skill when you're working with people. Is like, are you sure you know what you're asking? And so that reiteration of, this is what I'm interpreting, and is this the ask? And then coming to a collaborative creative solutions, because I personally believe that all solutions are creative. All humans are creative. And when we it's those mundane tasks, those repetitive tasks, those kind of soul-sucking tasks, those are kind of more of the spaces and places that hopefully humans will not have to be so much in, so we could focus on these types of creative situations. But there are also always situational, right? There's those clients that they know exactly what they want. They want the cut and dry thing. It's boring. You know that there might be a better way to access a certain group of, your ICP, their ICP, but at the same time, you cannot force someone to see a certain way, right? And that's the dance that we dance. But I'm always keeping creativity, honestly, wherever I go. So sometimes I'll say sure and I'll slip it in. And if they don't say anything, well, there it is. It's in there. A little piece of me is in there.
Love it. It is good. Uh, Real quick, just okay. So new people tuning in on the different streaming services, welcome. Use the text chat to ask questions or show what you're working on. You'll get advice, answers, feedback, insights from Lyla. And those of you, again, on Start Model, where we're doing this event, let me know if you want to jump on stage and have a conversation and share. You're welcome to do that. While we're waiting for some new stuff to come in, and welcome Brooklyn Blade, yeah, for joining us for the first time on Twitch. Uh, Lyla, how do you, or do you have a methodology for how you identify those, what some people call, North Star guiding principles, to really assess what it is someone's after and why they're after that, right? The context. How do you go about gathering the proper data to contextualize these things when you're working with someone or yourself even? Because a lot of times, especially founders, they skip a lot of core steps when they're building a product or, building a company, and they don't really take the time to identify what their values are, what their mission is, what, their uh, overall experience they want people to have at any touch point with, their team, their brand, their product. So what kind of methodology do you employ to go about getting these answers?
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge, and that's literally one of the things we're working at Dreamer AI. And know thyself truly. And but how do you know yourself? How do you know what you're really looking for? You have an idea. That's good. That's all gravy. But this idea, there's a reason behind it. There's a reason it gives you, like, the success, I think, comes from the passion. You really need to be passionate about something, especially if you're doing a startup. You're doing something and you need to give it everything you have. And the people that have the greatest success, I mean, it's, you can see it in their face, in their eyes, and they want to be a part of whatever it is you're creating because they can see that you have everything in it. And so one of the things we're doing with identifying who you really are, what's your voice, your ethos, right? Is, and this is the interesting part that you mentioned, the context. There needs to be context to the content, and that's literally part of AI architecture. Like, even as we're training AI, as I'm doing this, I'm doing architectural modeling because now I'm CIO, which is Chief Innovation Officer. So I've been developing and developing like a madwoman, which is fun. And it is part of the discovery phase of when we are going to be working with our clients. The tools that I've been developing in the architecture is literally this: it's turning somebody's qualitative data, right, into quantitative data. So sometimes we can take something that's qualitative, like, I like potatoes, or like, my vision is that everyone is able to utilize my tool and this is how they're going to use it. You're so focused on how someone's going to use something, and you're so focused on ROI, and you're so focused on ICP, that maybe you've lost touch with the reason. And sometimes it's great to just kind of put that all behind and journal and literally touch point with yourself as far as what is exciting for you, what drives you, what parts of your own life has this solved. Has it even solved anything for yourself first? This, a lot of what I'm developing now, which I think the reason it has so much meaning, uh, integration and travelings in the world in regards to being a female and in tech and science and whatnot. And it's even from being from California, it's been such a journey. And these are all, everyone has their own, everyone has their own magical journey, and that's the whole point of this world, right? And use that. Why waste that? That's your experience, that's your life. How does your journey inform upon what it is you're doing? Because it is, whether or not you have recognized it yet is irrelevant. It's there. There's a reason you're doing this. What is that reason? Identify it, and then have fun with it. That's the most important part. It has to be fun. It has to be genuine, because if it isn't, people are going to know it's just going to be, it's already flooded. We have, how many people are out there, they've made their own AI tools. They have these tools, and everybody's just out there doing this. So I think what really does matter more so than everybody just making their tools is about who you are, what you represent, and how you're planning to show up every day in the environment, and what environment are you creating. Because I think at the end of the day, what's going to end up happening with AI especially is everyone's going to be able to make their own tools. It's not going to be, it's not unique.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on again a number of different, very interesting, points to dig into, and I think like I took a couple notes, but I think the first one working backwards is, yeah, if you're looking at how AI tools, especially like vibe coding, is allowing so many people to just spin up these like products, and a lot of times they're not even really full-fledged products. They're more just like random tools that they think are products, and we can get into this like a little bit deeper
Mhm.
too. But they just rush to build something and release it, and yeah, they're not taking the time to contextualize the content of what they are presenting to people and why they're doing it and where it fits and what makes it unique. And a lot of times I use these examples when I'm helping out founders, especially when they're worried about sharing their idea because they think their idea is going to be stolen. There's a lot of common kind of cut and paste response to that, and execution is everything is like the main one, but a lot of people don't really understand what that means. And I try to give them the analogy of pancakes. You're making blueberry pancakes, right? And even if you have a
Mhm.
recipe for a blueberry pancake or blueberry pancakes, there's very little chance that every single person is going to plate the exact same blueberry pancakes for you if you gave that recipe to like 100 people. Because, like you said, humans are creative and
Yeah.
humans like to have control and they like to imprint themselves into what they're doing. And each of those different, outcomes of pancakes is going to appeal to people in different ways. Maybe someone's like, "Oh, I like my pancakes a little bit fluffier," or "I like mine smaller," or like more sugary, whatever it is, right? And those little changes in the execution, because it's different and it's going to apply to different people and in different ways, is where some of that separation starts to begin with how you are different from others in the market. But the way you package that and market that and target that is going to build onto that separation. But all of that really is going to be rooted in those core principles of why and your purpose and what you're doing and how you're going to like frame these things in that regard. So I'm curious too, like when you're working on your own projects or you're helping other people, like yeah, what kind of focus do you share in regards to helping them understand that there's a mountain of competition out there, and like there's a right way and a wrong way in a lot of cases of how to approach that and how to really seize the opportunities there, especially when it's so easy to just like rush and get to the market with something.
Absolutely. So this is one of my favorite subjects because I think it's the fear. There's a lot of fear and there's a lot of control issues that are happening here. So what's happening is you're afraid that you're not unique. You're afraid that you'll lose control over what you believe that what you have is unique. You will never ever lose that. You don't ever be afraid because you even if you wanted to, you couldn't be anything than other than what you are. In fact, most people try to conform. If anything, it's more like we're so unique and different that we're always trying to fit in. So remove those fears initially. Another thing is think about how the most successful companies are they are successful. I forget who said this. I don't know if it's Simon Sinek, and he was talking about how he approached one of the key leaders in Apple about the next like Samsung phone. He's like, "Oh, look at this new Samsung phone. I just it's hot. I just got like one of the prototypes. You want to look at it? It's amazing. It can do all these things." And he's like, "Well, I'm sure it does. That's nice." In other words, he wasn't really concerned. He wasn't competing. He didn't want to all of a sudden come and grab it, which way they do with Apple products. Like they'll grab it, like, oh, let me try to reverse engineer this and make this better. And it's more so when you're in competition with yourself, I think is that lesson is that do the best for yourself. If it's your name on it, like I think about it like this. If my name's on it, I'm going to give it my all because my name's on it. And that's what really matters. You couldn't possibly create something that's so entirely unique, and why would you, in a sense, to where it's it means that if you have an idea and there's something similar out there, that means it's most likely going to be successful, right? It means that other people want it and other people need it, and there's different pathways to the end result, and it's not going to be the same solution for everybody. Like there could be multiple people utilizing organizational software. But how we each want to organize things is going to be different. And depending upon the dashboard, depending upon the methodology, the connectors, there it's not a one size fits all. That's why there's so many software, and that's why there's so many different people utilizing these softwares. It's not going to be just one. So there's nothing to fear in that sense. And in fact, that will be more limiting. That sort of like kind of trying to want to hold on to something so tight is not going to serve you, and it will hinder you because fear is crushing and it will kill that creativity. Have fun with it is what I'm always saying. Because if you're not having fun, what's the point? What's the point? You know?
I appreciate that for myself, and hopefully the rest of the community is taking notes about this because it's very important, and it also lends itself to authenticity. And I think, doing this for so long, and I know that gets thrown around a lot now by people who don't really understand what it means. And my favorite thing is when I see, especially online in these communities, where people, are asking how to be authentic, and they put authentic in quotes, right?
Mhm.
As if it's this, like it's the complete antithesis of what authenticity is when they're trying to you know present
Harness it.
themselves, yeah, as
Yeah.
authentic without actually being authentic. And so yeah,
Mhm.
it's really important, like, and it goes back to like what you're saying in all these different areas. But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, you're having fun. And if you're not having fun, then there's a disconnect between what you authentically care about and are passionate for, and you know are all about, and how you express yourself or engage with these things. And that kind of lends itself as a sign that there's limitations on your authenticity and who you are and how you're able to, like, engage with others or projects or yourself. So I think that's really important to, like, yeah, like, speak to. Let me see what's going on. Dr. Paxmore says ideas are easy, execution is everything. Trademarked. Yes. Yeah. Other people, Claus, I see you're typing something, and we got some more people that joined us over here in Start Mata. Welcome, Claus, Christopher, Mirando. Yes, please, again, if you'd like to jump on stage, raise your hand, let us know, or use the text chat to ask questions. Claus says, however, this building in public movement is startup suicide when you reveal your secret sauce or vertical. I can talk on that. Delilah, what are your thoughts? Like when you see people building in public, where do
Mhm.
you think people kind of go a little bit, into the risky areas of, showing off too much versus simply using the process of them building to inspire others or educate others about what they're doing and start to build a community around themselves, their brand, their product.
Yeah. So I think ultimately it comes down to what your desire is. So some people are just desirous for, money is not the interest, success is not the interest, and they're more desirous of the community building because that in itself can be a commodity. And you can essentially make money off of that in and of itself. So if you build that community, build that rapport, that is more valuable to you because that's where you see yourself being authentic, right? And being able to put your juice, your energy into. So, for example, someone sitting there showing people the whole kit and caboodle, or I like to call it the whole enchilada. It's like if you're giving everyone the secret sauce and you're like, this is how you do it, build start to finish, and this is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm doing. That can actually create a really great audience as well because people sometimes they don't want to be like smoke and mirrors. They want the whole thing. They want to see the whole thing. That's what excites them. There's all sorts of different people, right? And so you're gaining your own audience. There's an audience for everybody and everything that you're doing. So it's the motive behind it. Is that your goal? Then that is success for you, right? Metrics and definitions of success. However, if your goal is to essentially build out a fully formed product, well, then obviously it would not exactly lend to your success to let everything out, and you probably wouldn't be doing that. It'd be more so you conceptualizing what you're wanting to build and then acquiring a team, finding a team to work with you, and going for those pre-seed rounds, going for funding, going for what you need to actually complete the build, unless you have massive capital. So it really does depend on your goals with what you're trying to do. That said, I still do really believe that execution is everything. There's lots of great ideas, and there will continue to be so. And they're all wonderful. There's many ways to do it. We're not that era to where who's going to go to the moon first, who's going to hit that spot, that secret spot. Um, there's a lot of ideals on what we're all looking at. Is it going to be that dystopian like Star Trek future to where that we're all collaborative and all knowledge is shared, and it's not about who owns anything, and instead knowledge is free, open, and available. And instead, what if we are just creating for the sake of creation because we that is our passion and our love? And how amazing could that look if we could all get together and not be afraid of you're stealing what I have? I still believe that mentality, that fear-based mentality will always be to the detriment of the person having it, because fear halts you. That just the mentality in and of itself. And there's nothing to fear. Really. There really is nothing to fear.
Yeah, no, I agree, and yeah, Dr. Paxmore agrees as well over on Twitch, and I'm sure others too. Yeah, Dr. Paxmore adds, the acquisition of wealth is no longer the driving force in our lives. We work to better
Bingo.
ourselves and the rest of humanity. Yeah, I think that's really like the most beautiful thing about Star Trek. The stories and what's shown there in
Mhm.
that future, and it's always so heart wrenching and almost disturbing when you see people that are claiming to be like fans of that future and misusing that to just prey on
Mhm.
people's hopes and dreams to just get them to do horrible things that are working against that. We can get into that a little bit more, but let's actually jump back to real quick, building in public movement too when it comes to like revealing like the secret sauce or vertical and stuff like I think the only real concern that anyone should ever have with that is if your goal, and again, it goes back to what you're saying, Delilah, about making sure that you're aware of what your goals are. If your
Mhm.
goal is to patent a technology, that's really like the only concern that one should have. And there are limitations in how you're sharing aspects of what that technology is, or that certain design elements are, to secure that patent and protect it. But outside of that, there's so much that you can share publicly that works in your favor and will only work in your favor. And it doesn't
Mhm.
matter, again, if people know what that secret sauce is or your vertical, because as you said, and as we already kind of covered a little bit, everyone's going to execute in their own way. They're going to imprint themselves onto it and they're going to change it. It's going to be different from what you're doing. It's going to appeal to different people in a different way. Yeah, and yeah, Dr. Paxmore says open source is thriving. It's a silly concern, or they think it's a silly concern. Yeah, so again, other people that are just joining us on all the different streaming services, please share your questions in text chat. Share what you're working on. I will relay them to Lyla, and we'll get some answers, advice, insights, feedback, whatever you need. We'll find a way to help you. Yeah, while waiting for other people to join in, be bold, people. We're waiting for that. I want to go back to a very, very common thing that a lot of people struggle with at all stages of their development, their career, their, you know, uh, lifetime as an entrepreneur. Having assumptions for how people are going to use or interact with your product and service and the reality of that. I'm sure you've
Mhm.
experienced this a billion times in your lifetime already. I'd like to hear about, again, like your methodology to how you approach these assumptions you have, and how you manage tracking the KPIs and the reality of how they're using your product, so you can learn and
Mhm.
iterate and hopefully move towards something that's much more enjoyable to use, more beneficial to them, and ultimately more valuable for them, while also struggling with the the realization that your assumption weren't quite right.
So that's funny because this is actually an exciting part for me. I think everything is perception. And what really gets exciting is that you make some assumptions based off of several factors, right? You play the statistics game, you play that crystal ball game, which is one of my favorites. And you're tying in several factors. You're like, if this, then that. If this, you're making logic statements. You're actually creating your own wonderful system, and you've worked so hard, you've thought about this, and you had a team, and you all powwowed, and it was magical, and you targeted your, ICP, and, so you went out there and it was like, well, that doesn't look quite right. But that's what's fun. You actually get to see the nature, the human nature, and how it responds to whatever it is that you're doing. And then the greatest time is pivoting. So I think the greatest advice I would have to say is, if pivoting is not in your nature, then startup is most likely not in your nature, because to pivot and to change and adaptability, and not being so stuck with, not being so precious about what you have, right? It's not so precious to where it's like, oh, like I did all this and I did this, and oh, but I had it, and it's right, I know it. Rigidity, release, be loose, have fun with it, laugh it off, be like, okay, well, I guess that didn't work out that quite, but not even didn't work out. It did work out. It worked out in a way that you just didn't expect. And so this is new data. You bring that new data in, and then you start interpolating with that and being able to understand now the shift. Okay, so if this is what I'm seeing as far as data, and these are the people that are interacting, I'm going to start understanding why. And you don't even have to change your approach. You don't even have to shift exactly what you're doing, because you're just understanding that what the ICP that you thought, the people that you thought you were addressing, might not have been exactly. And these are the new group of people. And understanding that group of people, would I would say, is maybe your next step, is really understanding why. Why, what does this mean to them? Why is it so important to them? The why matters. And then once you've discovered that, then you'll really understand the reason why your product is successful, because you would never even know why your product could be successful. You would even never know. You're just making assumptions on how people should use a thing, but you are you. And even if you have a team, they are them. And that's the beauty. Letting the people tell you why your product and how your product is important, and that's how you actually understand what your product is. So it's like, sometimes you might make a thing, you don't even really know what your product is until people kind of tell you. They're going to tell you what you have. They're going to be mirrors. People, anyone coming into your life, anyone that's using, they're all mirrors. And it's just, it gives you this, beautiful face up view of what you have. I think that's fun.
So building on that, when it comes to having those conversations and hearing feedback or seeking it, like going directly to them, because a lot of times you run into some people that are very vocal and they have no problem expressing themselves, good or bad, right? If they love something or don't like something, and typically a lot of what people talk or share is going to be negative. But
Hmm.
how do you go about really, again, contextualizing the content that they're sharing to understand the deeper reasoning behind why they're experiencing something good or bad, and how to make sense of that so you can iterate and possibly pivot or whatever is required for you to, again, produce a more enjoyable, beneficial, valuable experience for them to have with your products or service.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So yes, the nature of things, I believe, are, or at least this is what the data shows us, is that more often than not, when people are going to have commentary or are going to have an opinion, it's usually negative, because that's what takes the effort. It's like, this bothered me so much that I'm going to complain about it. Versus when you're actually happy about something, unless you are ecstatic, unless you're like blown away, something happened, it changed, a life-changing event, and then you also want to share that. So it becomes these two extremes. And what are the outliers? Because those extremes are not oftentimes the curve or the trend. So feedback, it's interesting. It's a very interesting beast. I would say, once again, go back to your ethos, go back to the why, the purpose, and what you're doing, and understand within the parameters of the individuals that are coming now in and informing you of what they like and don't like, and see if these people correlate with whatever that ethos was, and if these people have heard the message, and then maybe think about how the message might not be clear. If you're not seeing that correlation pattern, if you're like, well, what I'm trying to deliver for the people is freedom in a sense, to where they are no longer having to do these repetitive tasks, and I've removed this barrier for them, but now they're coming back and telling me, I feel confused, this is more work than I've had to do, this is not helpful. That means the delivery. So you have that ethos, right? And you have the purpose, you have your mission, and it's coming up to this wall with people's feedback telling you, well, not only did I not reach that conclusion, but in fact, it's more difficult. I could have just done this myself. And that's when you go back to the drawing board and look at the delivery method. So it's not necessarily that what your idea, the principle and what you have is wrong. That's never wrong, if you will. But the delivery method might not be reaching these people, and that is very important, because if your mission is to provide this service, to provide this tool, to provide this end result for the customer, then that is not being achieved. And you need to look at that. And I think that's not, again, it's not a bad thing. It's refinement. It's just constant refinement, and that's what it's going to look like for a long time. Even companies like Whole Foods and a lot of other different companies, they went into the market doing Whole Foods. That wasn't really what they wanted to do. Even Google, they wanted to do ABC. They really wanted to do other things, like with Whole Foods, it's Love Life, which is this whole holistic approach to living. But they came into the market with where they could touch and hit it, you know so it's still their ethos. They're still using their ethos, right? But they're hitting the market, they're meeting the market where the market stands. Sometimes people might not be ready to hear the whole story, and that's okay. You give, like Anne Marie always says, give them a bagel. Don't give them the whole buffet. And it's kind of it's a sense to where, yeah, as entrepreneurs, as creative in the mind, you see the vision, you're like, oh, and like, oh, you're going out there and you're just like, this is great. They're all, it's going to totally hit. They're going to get it. And you hit, and they're like, what is this? And it's that moment to where you realize, I can't force my vision on everybody, and I need to listen. I need to take a step back and understand, um where am I putting that ego back in there, to where I'm just thinking of me. I'm just thinking of how I see it, and I need to lens shift. And when you really truly understand your audience, and you are in there, and you are respectful, and you're not sitting there taking offense, it's not an offensive thing, right? And you're then able to use it as just data and work with that. That's been my mindset, and it's working so far.
It's actually very wise, and I think this is something that I'm gonna guess you developed when you're working in product. It's something that I learned early on working in product. So like my journey
Mhm.
was, yeah, photographer and then band manager, and then I got into experience design without realizing I was doing experience design and UX and all that stuff. It took until I was much older and experienced to get recruited to an actual product UX firm, and they're like, oh, you never went to school for this. Here, let me take you on my wing and show you all the processes I learned in school for this, and this is what you've been doing. I'm like, oh my god, okay, awesome. But yeah, I mean, it comes down to understanding two things: timing, and then what expectations and established behaviors are already established in the market, and like you're saying, meeting that with your ego and recognizing, okay, if I try to force them into my vision at this stage, at this time, it's too much for them. It's too overwhelming. It's too different. And whether those differences are producing really beneficial, good results or not, because the behavior is so different, the expectations are so different, it's still going to cause discomfort in people. And this is where, when I'm talking to other people, we talk about the MVP and how it fits into the larger, complete vision. It's not only to just, enter the market with the least amount of effort and risk as quickly as possible, but it's also to give them a bagel and see if what you're doing is able to resonate with them enough to get them in. without
Mhm.
presenting them with so much different things to scare them away, right? And so yeah, it's just really good to be aware of what people are already doing, why they're doing it, what they're familiar with, and recognizing that if you're going to work towards this crazy hyper futuristic vision that you have that's very disconnected from where we are today, you got to hold their hand and get them there. Create a little trail with, the different versions that you release. And you see this a lot too, like when we're like, younger, and Facebook was much, much more prevalent as like the main thing everyone's using every day. When they changed the feed design, right? Do you remember this
Yeah.
when they roll out a new change to the feed? And
Everyone loses their mind.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
they lose their mind for like 2 weeks straight,
Yeah.
and then it would go away. People would be, calm down. But then,
Yeah.
like, a month later, 2 months later, they do it again, and everyone loses their mind again. But when they're losing their mind not about where it was a year ago, but where it was the last change, because they got accustomed to that new change and now it's different, right? And so it's just one of these things. People, they become familiar, they freak out with any sort of change. Just being aware of that and holding their hand, and like you're, kind of touching on, just give them a little taste, a little something that is enough to get them in and start to build from that. But it's all great. So okay, so Dr. Paxmore says, I don't know how this fits exactly, but I keep thinking about a student telling my writing professor friend that they want to be a writer and then that they hate reading. So it's a funny little thing. It's like, yeah,
That is
again.
funny.
All right, Mirando over here on Starmada says, hello, how can you find a community that is ready to work with you? In all sphere of development, if your product reasonably solves a problem. So yeah, I mean, the heart of this question is, yeah, how can you find people who are ready to work with you when, yeah, your product, you believe your product is ready to solve a problem? What are your thoughts on this? Connecting, your company, your product to a community and building around that.
So by community building, I'm assuming you're talking about, so you have the thing you want to build. You've kind of worked on it and you've essentially come up with the basis of what you're planning to do. And now you're trying to find like-minded individuals and you're trying to collaborate with them and see if you can build the dream team. Is that the question?
Mirando, please feel free to share more context, but I believe so. We'll see if Miranda adds more. So we can start more
Okay.
like, yeah, generalized in that context.
Okay, sure. So the I mean everyone says this. I mean it's networking is huge and it because it does really matter. You never know who you're going to find and who you're going to meet when you're out there networking. I'm the first person to say that I don't really do too well in extended social situations. Um and I always find that my battery gets drained very easily. That said, I've flung myself out there and networked, and I'm not one of those people that like it's always contriving to like this basic formula of like guaranteed this will happen. I mean, it is it's very true. I went out there and networked and it worked. It really worked. So you just have to put yourself out there and it becomes don't make it a tedious thing because then it's obvious people really are attracted to energy. Again, it's they will find you, they will come to you. People become attracted to you when they feel that you are a kindred spirit in a sense, they want to, and at this point I get approached a lot, right? Because the little bit of networking I've done, and like again, that authenticity that shines through, and your devotion and your obvious desire, that's what builds it because you are really going to want people to go to bat for you. Your ride or dies. That's what you're looking for. If you are serious about business, entrepreneurship, and startup specifically, this is what you got. You got to have moxie. You got to, and I'm not talking about, making it miserable. I don't ever sleep. I don't ever eat, whatever. It's more so the passion. It needs to really be the driving force. You have to really want this. And I mean, really want it. And because that's what it takes. And that's going to push through, and you're going to meet other people that really want it, and they're going to only surround themselves with people that really want it. So they're not going to be attracted to your energy unless you're going to attract whatever energy you're putting out, is what I'm trying to say. You go out there, you do this networking, you give it, you feel the feel, like you're like, I know what I want, I know what I want to build, and I'm looking for my ride or dies. You go out with that mentality, you will find them. I don't care where you are. You don't have to be in LA, you don't have to be in San Francisco. People are out there everywhere, and we are all excited. There's a lot of crap going on, of course, in our country, in the world, and if anything, I think that's lending to a greater desire for autonomy, a greater desire to find a way out of the system and a way to be there for one another. So I think if anything, this is a very exciting period of time. And I think that more so than ever, it's going to be very easy to find fellow startup people. So get yourself out there. That's the only way I can put it. I'm not just talking about forums. I'm talking about literally your face out there, not forums. I mean, forums are great. I'm not saying that they're bad, but if you're really serious, you got to meet a person. That's my best advice there.
I think it's really good advice, and I think what's really powerful about it too is, again, the way you contextualize it with yourself and like your own battery. And there's a lot of people, especially that are in like startups, coming from the engineer side, most of all, that are we're drawn to like those sorts of fields because they're introverts at heart, and
Yep.
they do better in limited capacity around other people or certain types of people and certain energies, right? And
Mhm.
it goes back to, again, what you were saying earlier about just being authentic and letting that speak for itself. And yeah, the passion, it doesn't need to be overwhelming in the sense where, like you said, you're obsessed. You're not, you don't need to be obsessively working on this thing or obsessively just cold pitching it to everyone that you meet. It's finding that way to be authentically yourself, but vulnerable and open enough to share that you're passionate about this thing when the opportunity arises for you to share that. And what you're right, and that's where, like, kind of like my experience is balances, especially for myself, but also organizing communities, being a part of lots of different communities where you've got those people who are obsessed and they're trying too hard to just
Mhm.
make something happen. And that gives the wrong energy to a lot of people. And the people that it does attract are ultimately other people who are unhealthy because they're also being obsessive about their own ambitions and what they want and doing unhealthy things to themselves and loved ones because those people, because of their obsession, they're overworking themselves, they're making sacrifices to time with loved ones, for hobbies, for other experiences in life that are going to help them develop more authentic, meaningful relationships with people, but also give them the tools to innovate organically. And I'd love to, like, jump on this a little bit later if we have time, but the idea of innovation and where you pull inspiration from that. But we've got a couple more things that have been shared, so we'll circle back to that. Yeah, Miranda says that's it. So super happy that that's helpful. Dr. Paxmore says, I was looking for this quote in relation to the alienation you can create by trying to create something unique. Here's the quote. You can build a car that puts the windshield wiper controls underneath the radio instead of on the steering wheel stalk, or make a new icon to represent the defrosters, but drivers will find it more challenging to drive. Eventually, they will adapt, but the best approach is to keep to conventions unless there is a strong reason not to do so. And he says this is from Building Blocks of Tabletop Game Design, a game design book. If you haven't read it, Delilah, I'm certain that Dr. Paxman is going to recommend that for you to check out, and everyone else in the community. And this is something that might be interesting to you to also touch on. When it comes to product and innovation and design in all things, video games or any sort of tabletop game or game in general, for me, is an incredible source of inspiration and place to learn from, because when you think about video games, so many of their users, right? They're coming with very certain expectations for the genre, or the publisher, the design studio putting out the game. Like if you look at Bethesda games, right? when you get like a new Bethesda game, there are certain entrenched behaviors and expectations you'll have because it's a Bethesda game.
Yep.
So yeah, like when you're thinking about building a product or a service in any other field or industry, like how valuable do you find video game design and best practices? Do you pull from them? Like, do you reference them? Do you share that with other people that are trying to build stuff? Like, where does that fit into your your experiences?
Oh gosh, I am so excited for this. This is like yes to all. So game theory, game design. I mean, if we look at games and the purpose of them from a long time ago, like even with chess or backgammon, they were often utilized to teach strategy to young monarchs, and it's an excellent opportunity to to make something enjoyable instead of it being staunch and dry. Us human beings, again, going back to creativity, we are curious, fun little creatures. That's what we really are. And we're always wanting to play. There is no age. I do not believe in that. There is just the eternal child. And you need to always spark that. And it's, there's always this sort of harsh divide with don't be childish or don't do childish things. This association with being responsible means that you eliminate all fun, is what it feels like. And this couldn't be more wrong because this is the true nature of humans. Back to game design theory, and the most vocal audience, I would say, for products must be the gaming community. I've never seen such passion in myself, like when I'm playing a game of League of Legends and I'm just like tower diving, and the passion that comes out. But seriously, the disruption of this, what is expected to what I'm getting, and the amount of involvement is unrealistically exponential in the gaming community. And we're able to see a lot of what game developers and the even psychology behind it is being developed. Like a lot of marketing is just psychology. And they're trying to reach your reptile brain, which I feel is kind of a little bit manipulative. But and you've seen some of the tactics which are failing now as a result of the failing game industry. The game industry is now failing because it has gone highly corporate and they're not listening to the individuals. Here's a prime example why film, media, game, these entertainment industries are failing because they have failed to listen to their audience. It is a failure. And instead of giving and listening, what they have done is they've gone so far into the science of who is this human being, how can we manipulate them, let's put more boobs, that's going to work. It's this essentially these themes that we're becoming bored of. And you see, at some point you can bore an audience, it becomes repetitive, and it becomes sort of like, something might have felt good initially, but you just keep rubbing that same spot, it's not going to feel so great. It's like, be experimental, be fun, be avant-garde, do something different. The audience, the world is craving something new, fresh, and unafraid. And what these corporate are saying is, why break what works? ABC, do it over again, same thing over and over and over again. But it's not working. Your formula, sir, is not working, because if it was, the industries would not be failing. So we need to take a lesson, that we think we can scientifically explain things so well. We're so confident in the hubris, right? And maybe what about if you actually cared about the video? It goes back to it. A lot of these, game developers I worked with, even I'm like, hey, what's your favorite game? I'm talking about games. I'm like, I know, I mean, I'm from consoles to like PCs, building PCs my whole life. I've gone everything from like OG, like Prince of Persia, to playing all the original Fallouts from like 1 and 2. And I'm doing like, oh yeah, everyone's like, oh yeah, what's your favorite Square Enix game? Of course, mine's FF7. And but and it's just these themes of like being able, and then like, how'd you like this boss? But I end up talking to a lot of them, and they honestly don't even play video games. Like, and I'm just like, you're making video games, but you don't play video games. That's a problem. And in my opinion, that's the problem right there. It's like, this is a craft of passion. These people who are making these games, the success these people had, the reason they had that success is because they were passionate. There it goes again. There it goes again. And you can literally feel the saltine cracker. It's like it's just so bland, it's so repetitive, and I guess I can play this like case in point, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to like, get in trouble, like sorry about Bethesda, but like what was that Star, whatever it
Yeah,
was,
I brought that up for a very specific reason, and it's yeah, well, yeah,
killed me. I'm like, you're killing me.
yeah, it killed
But
me.
it's how
It killed me going into that game, like I said, because of these expectations that you have for every Bethesda game and what made them great, but then seeing them little by little remove these layers and depth that made them so just amazing and unique. And then you get into
yeah.
Starfield, and the worst part about that game wasn't even here are all the expectations from all of our other previous releases in these different universes, but
Mhm.
they're dropping these nuggets when you first start the game, right? When you're creating your character and you're picking your background, right? Very unique background with different kind of
Mhm.
like, like skills that come with it and perks and stuff. And then these other elements that are giving your character different degrees of depth. On the surface, it's telling you these are cool things that you'll look forward to and experiencing in this game as you
Yeah.
develop your character and go through the storylines. And then as you play the game, every single expectation they set up in the game is not met. And like the most obvious one I can think of is from a mechanical standpoint, if you're like playing as like a bounty hunter kind of like character and that's like your background, and you have like your own ship. You've got these, rigs or whatever
Yep.
brigs where you can like, which serve as prison cells on your ship.
Yeah.
They don't function. You can't capture any bounties. You can't put
That's
them in your
lame.
brig. You can't.
So lame.
Yeah, it was like what is going on? And then the more I played the game, every single thing they introduced went nowhere, and I'm like, what is this? So I'd love to hear your yeah. Now that I hopefully set a
Uh,
safe place for you to vent about this and share from again a product experience, a
mhm.
designer like perspective. I'd love to hear it.
Oh yeah. So fundamentally what they've done, and this is again the issue with this is, and it goes back to the issue that we're trying to solve with Dreamer AI, with work and providing people security and safety and stability. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You got, and you're like, what are you talking about? How does this have to do? It has everything to do with it. Because if you do not have your safety and security, your basic needs of life, you cannot go to self actualization. You can't progress through the various change so that you can have creativity and logical thought. Creativity can't come from if you need to eat and you're scared that you're going to lose your job because you're working at Bethesda. Did I say that? And or any other, AAA studio, we see people get dropped all the time. We're seeing people get dropped left and right. There's a lot of fear. Once they squeeze the juice out of you, they throw you away. And so as a result, people are like, I got to get mine, and I got to, and they're more concerned with appeasing these hired leaders. So there'll be team leaders, the art department, team leaders of like the game mechanics and the level design, narrative design. How these are they're so compartmentalized and so disconnected and disjointed. There's so many of these individuals working in these cells that are not even familiar with any moving parts. Well, no wonder the game is disjointed. You're not working on a whole game. You're working on an infinitesimal speck of the game, and you're repeating that motion over and over and over until they tell you to stop. And that is not a game. It is essentially removing a lot of the aspect of what needs to make it whole. And there's somebody up there orchestrating, like I'm going to pull all these parts together, but it's not successful because, the few can't just sit there. They need to collaborate more. There needs to be more freedom of creative expression, because if these people and the game testers, if these people are not gamers, and how are you going to hit that? How are you going to develop something for these group of people if you're not passionate about gaming? Because you would know that. You'd be like, I'd want to see that in a game. I'd be like, oh, okay, I have to fix this. This is what I'd want to do. This is what I'd want. That's continually what ends up happening when I'm building levels, when I'm doing narrative. This is what I'd want. This is what would get me excited. No, I don't want to read a brick of text. No, I'm not sitting there interested in go fetch me quests. Like fetch quests are just like, there has to be another way. How can we use art or lighting going back to stop motion, how can you use lighting, creative lighting? How can you use the environment to then invoke curiosity? Going back to what you're saying about not giving everybody everything all at once, the mystique, let people have some discovery. That was the fun part when we're kids playing video games. It was this magical world. It was that moment when you had to enter disc 2 for Final Fantasy 7. You're at the end, of disc 1, and you're all standing around the edge of the Midgar, and you put disc 2 in and you wait, and all of a sudden it's like this explosion of this world, da da da, it hits you right with all the music. Then you realize, I have a whole world. What? And it was revolutionary. That, mind is like, and that, it still gives me goosebumps to this day. Like, that's what it is. It's that discovery moment. It's that you didn't I didn't know that was going to happen, and you've blown me away. You see, they're overselling and they're under delivering. They're focusing on all this art and all this promises, and just like kind of cyberpunk. Gosh, cyberpunk. Oh my gosh. What a great, speaking of tabletop, what a great, because I'm into LARPing as well. Besides Dungeons and Dragons, mine is actually World of Darkness was my fix. But it's like, how could you have ruined that? How could you do this? It was just another GTA. What it felt like to me was a GTA skinned out with cyberpunk. And they're telling me that it's going to be the revolution, the next evolution of gaming. This is going to be the next thing, and that's what they keep doing now. This is going to be the next thing. Oh, we're going to blow your minds. Oh, we're going to what?
Yeah, like these things blow my mind with disappointment is what
Yeah.
happens. Like, yeah, that game, Cyberpunk is the first game I got a refund on because
Yep.
and this
Me
is the
too.
thing, I wasn't following the marketing all that closely. It was just
Mhm.
like when the company put out their own little marketing releases to hype up the release coming out, and they'd show
Mhm.
the developers playing the game, right? It wasn't like I
Yep.
was looking at other people's articles or interpretations and everything. I'm looking at what they're sharing with us to set those expectations. And then I got the game, and it was like, oh my gosh, where is all this? What is this? And then the
Yep.
AI is like the worst performing AI stuff ever. And Bethesda's really bad too, but at least like Bethesda, like Todd's an idiot in the way that he
Yeah.
handles this, and like he's like, oh, we make it dumb on purpose. Like he actually said that. I'm like, why would you do that? Like, and it's like
Ah,
again one of these things where you're touching on where you want something new, you want something challenging, you want something that's going to change the way that you're experiencing these things for the good because it's fresh, right? And then they strip it and they make it the dumbest thing ever, the shallowest thing ever. But yeah, like Cyberpunk again is one of these things where it kept introducing these different mechanics within the game itself, and then you experiencing them, and it goes nowhere, and you're like, what the hell? But it was worse than that because it was like also not working. But the one of the
yeah.
biggest things that bugged me about that game, which I don't think like they can't correct, it's the narrative and the way that they
Yep.
tell the story. Right, you're playing the main character, and they reveal that, oh, you have 3 days to until you die or something. Maybe it was like 3 weeks, but then it's like with that main like plot point hanging over your character, right?
Mhm.
They're like, oh,
Yeah.
also here's all these mechanics so you can go buy 30 different apartments and become a
Yeah.
drug lord in the space of these 3 weeks or whatever. It's like, why would I ever do that? Narratively, that makes no sense. It's
Yes.
counterintuitive to the plot that you're telling me. What is going on? And it was just like another little more like subtle point from some people that would just irk the hell out of me, and it was just a complete disconnect. Like you're pointing out with all these different people working on the game, and the people in charge likely not understanding what makes a game beautiful and fun and
Yeah.
engaging for the long term. That's another thing where a lot of these people go wrong. Founders, early stage founders as well, they're too focused on the vanity metrics or the short-term metrics, and they think that if for founders the easiest one to make a comparison to is like being able to raise $1 million as quickly as possible, right? And thinking that that is going to validate all their assumptions and prove that their product is going to have product market fit and be meaningful and be successful and stuff. But it's something that is completely out of context with what is real success, right? And the
Yep.
same thing can be looked at video games when they're looking at like these microtransactions, or how much they make on like initially selling the game. But the most, I think, lucrative games like Skyrim, right? It's a game that has staying power, lasting power, and it's because of it is more fun to play and experience in different ways. And another game that's incredible is Baldur's Gate 3 because of that.
Oh
It
yeah.
has so much
Yeah.
replayability and freedom to like role play in a way
Yes.
that's meaningful and unique, and it hits all the expectations that you expect and more because of what they've done. Uh, okay, I don't know how much time you have until you have to go. I'm having a great time. People are asking questions and adding a lot of chatter. A lot over on Twitch is coming up. So you let me know, like, how much time you got.
Oh, I'm good. This is fun.
Awesome. Great. Okay, so let's take a real quick. Hang on, I gotta fix some things. Okay, looking over at the Twitch chat. Okay, so pick up Tricor. Welcome. Sorry for thinking you're a spam bot at first. I misread your comment. So yeah, Pickup says there are countless video reviews of Sims 2 versus newer Sim games and how the magic was stripped out with each new version. Dr. Paxmore is adding a lot because they spent a lot of time researching and digging into all kinds of fun sorts of game development and design things. Yeah, setups and payoffs. There's no payoffs in these games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Many indie designers are actively designing around, as in evading, dark patterns, which AAA game design are the foundation for. So yeah, there's a lot of great indie games that are trying to push against all of this
Absolutely.
crap, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it leads to more, big studios doing better and learning from this. I don't want to derail this conversation explicitly a game design conversation, but I think this is what Dark Souls does well. It is explicitly a game, whereas many other of these other games are cinematic. They use filmic language to tell their stories, where Dark Souls uses game design to tell its story. And that's like a very extreme example for sure, because it's one of the hardest games to understand the story from, because they're not like when you're interacting with characters, they're very fragmented and you're getting little clues and you have to piece these things
Right.
together, especially as you find new items in the world and you have to read the descriptions and such. Something that Majora's Mask solved 25 years ago. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Pick up Tricor asks, Lyla, what game inspired you and sparked your interest in games, and why? Mm.
I've been gaming since I think I was about 3 or 4. Initially, my first introduction to video games was a Super Nintendo that my cousin, I love you, cousin, would hog and never let me play. It was Mario. I never got a chance to play Mario, and that's why I kind of you're gonna think I'm gonna say Mario and Super Nintendo. I actually ended up becoming a Sega fangirl because I despised Mario as a result. I made a decision because I could not have that which I wanted, that I would despise it. Okay, so I guess what really solidified me understanding the fact that I would never stop playing video games. Gosh, I hate to say this. I know it's so generic. I have to say FF7. It's just, and I know it's Ocarina of Time is right there as well. I mean, they're both released almost at the same time. FF7, I believe, is a year sooner, and they're both utilizing some like and Crash Bandicoot. It's another one. Um, these are great examples of games that felt free. I felt it wasn't quite a sandbox, right? But I wasn't a rat in a labyrinth. And I was constantly being challenged and surprised. And it was an adventure. I think I was always looking for an adventure, is what it was. I've always been an avid reader. So my imagination has been great. So I guess Nino Kuni, Soikoden, all of these kind of adventure like feelings to where it's like there's this protagonist and this impossible quest and it's like me, are you sure? And then it's like you get to find yourself and you grow with the character and you kind of you explore yourself. It's more than just a character. It's you. It's how you play it. And there's many ways, for instance, to play Ocarina of Time. Like I did some really different approaches to, like, when I was attacking, and it just gives you so much freedom. There's not one way to solve it. And I think that's really what makes it fun and unique. With Final Fantasy 7, I mean, geez, it's probably the reason I got involved in sustainability. Honestly, it's about, they're talking about it's really, honestly, it's a fight for sustainability. Mako's just like the oil companies, and they're like, they're just wrecking it all, like these big corporate, Shinra, dun dun dun. And of course, how can you deny Sephiroth? It's and then the story is a lot darker than you would think. And it's this very mature story. And you feel all of a sudden, because they try to baby you sometimes as a kid, or they try to hold your hand. A lot of games nowadays are holding your hand. I don't like my hand held. I want to come into this. This is why Dark Souls is fun, because you're having to come into it, and sometimes it can be frustrating. But then at the same time, it's like you're coming to your own, and I think that's what matters. The player, it's yourself. How can I find myself in this game? You know, those are kind of like my favorite. Of course, I love Fallout 1 and 2. I like the top-down versions. I play like Trudegard, which is like a Russian remake of it, or Adam. That's another. It's like Trudegard and Adam are Russian remakes of the 1 and 2. I mean, there's countless games that I've played that are just each one more epic than the next. I've been a huge Counter-Strike fan. 1.6. I used to scrim. I used to be part of teams. And so that was something I hustled for a bit. It depends. It all depends if I'm looking for the quick, fix, or the commitment. You're looking at that RPG, or I'm feeling strategic. I also love strat games. That's right. I love Age of Empires. That was huge. I mean, I learned a lot of history from that game. No, but seriously, strategy, again, it's approach and strategy. And a lot of what's it called, there's a few other games that really did this even better than Age of Empires, but when you actually had to make strategic alliances, with various factions, and you're having to use politics, and this is all informing me today. It's like tactics. You're looking at these tactics, and how are you going to, you have resources, you have knowns and unknowns, and how are you applying what you have to get the outcome you want? It's stats, it's politics, it's business. So, I mean, it's definitely informed, and it also kept it fun, because if everything's a game, then I'm just playing my best game, right?
I love it. This is so good. And yeah, like my favorite thing is like definitely pointing to video games with other people, especially founders who are trying to create products, and explain to them, like, spend more time playing video games and pay attention to how
Yeah.
the first run experience is for you, and what your thoughts are, your emotions are, and dig into that and contextualize those and leverage that as you know information in how you're going to design your product, whether that's an onboarding system or a new dashboard, and showcasing how the dashboard functions and why these things are presented that way. It's just like all these different systems in video games, like we touched on earlier, they have to balance understanding what those expectations are for their studio, their publisher, the genre, but also how they introduce new things, because yeah, most games are introducing new mechanics and new ways to play the game. At least the good ones are, and they have to educate and like teach people how to utilize these things. So it was really great. So lots more in chat. Dr. Praxmore adds, surely the capitalism will defeat itself in regards to like these big designs publishers going wrong. The Majora's Mask comment was about the false sense of limited time in Starfield. Yes,
Yeah.
and Cyberpunk as well. True, all of those games were
Yep.
hub worlds that let you explore, which is where that sense of adventure comes from. And that was really powerful as a kid. Yeah, and that's, as an older person now playing video games, I also hate having my handheld, because when we were younger, when we played these games on, NES or Sega or whatever it was, there was no handhelding, right? You had like there was a hotline for Nintendo that I called, and my parents got so
Yeah.
pissed off at. I got stuck in like the what was it, like the ice dungeon in Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, for whatever reason, my brain was just like not connecting the dots, and I called the hotline. I spent so much money trying to get like an answer for
Aw.
this, but like that was the thing. It was like you had to figure it out, and there's very limited options to do that. The game didn't
Yep.
like hold your hand, and now, especially as an adult, when you got a fully formed brain and you're playing these games that are for you know grown people as much as they're for kids, right? It's so
Hmm.
frustrating because you don't get to have that freedom or that satisfaction of overcoming something and figuring something out and being like, I put in that effort, I overcame it. Oh, it feels so good finally.
That's
And
that
that's
feeling.
yeah, and that's where Dark Souls is so good at that,
Yeah.
because it's part of the mechanic, and they did it such a brilliant way where in the universe of the game you're meant to die and be
Yeah.
reborn, right? And
Yeah.
it's just like part of the game. And yeah, you die 100 times to this boss or this little area,
Embrace the
and,
thought.
and then
Yeah.
you figure out, oh, I can do this, or oh wait, if I respec in magic instead, I can
Hmm.
totally just like just beat the shit out of this so quick, right? It just
Yep.
gives you that opportunity to like try new things and explore and become this thing that is so different, and I love that. And so yeah, it's really interesting and fun to hear you like share your experiences and into this. Okay, so pick up Tricor says, Lyla, you mentioned Suikoden. Suikoden is close to my heart because of the open concept of the world and how your path feels your own. Yeah, let me look at other things. Okay, so checking in. Okay, so there might be some new people that cycled in to these chats. Lila's got a little bit more time, so we'll do some like final call for questions from you all. Use the text chat to ask questions or share what you're working on if you just want to get general advice, feedback, insights. If you want answers, just post those questions and I'll relay them. And while we wait for this, something that I think would be interesting is innovation. So, we touched on this a little bit earlier. A lot of people think about innovation in extreme manners. Like, if I'm going to be an innovator, I have to create flying cars or I have to make a teleporter. A lot of times, the most lucrative innovations are small little tweaks. Like going back to the windshield wipers, there's a movie, I forget the name of it. You might know, others might know, but there was a movie released probably like the 90s or something about the inventor of the intermittent windshield wipers on cars, and how cars before only had one setting, just one speed,
Hmm.
right? And this guy was like, "What the hell? It's only drizzling. I don't need my windshield wiper going like this. I'm gonna invent like, a new windshield wiper system that has different settings and different speeds." And so they invented this thing, and it became a huge legal battle. And because it was such a lucrative addition of the technology to every car, right? And this is just one of these things. It's just like the smallest little tweak on something to give someone a more enjoyable experience and more
Yep.
benefits or easier access to benefits is what's creating the most value. So for you as an innovator, especially in your new role as chief innovation officer, how do you think of innovation? Where are you pulling innovation from? And when you think about force versus organic innovation or like inspiration to innovate, what are your thoughts on that too? So I just dumped a whole bunch of different things on you. So wherever you want to start or ramble or go into, feel free. It's all going to be insightful and wonderful to hear.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, this is actually what I love to talk about because innovation is, I believe, at the core of everything that we do. Um, Good innovation, I suppose, comes from a need first, a desire and a need, just like that gentleman who saw the desire or who felt the need and who had a desire to solve for it. It comes from a quizzical mind, a curious mind, one that is applying all that they have done. The more that, and that's going back to like how you're saying, dividing your time and not too focused on one thing. It's actually those of us who have done a lot with our lives. It was just counterintuitive to what they teach you. They say, stay with one thing, stay with one job, focus on that and go forward. Well, I mean, that might be good and well for the person who is career focus driven. They're like, they want this one pathway and they want to grow in that pathway. But if you are going to, if you, the type of mentality that you have is you're that person who couldn't ever stay at one job for very long, that you're that type of person where they'd hand you a task and you'd want to make it your own. you're that type of person. These type of people, these are the innovators. If that's you, you're an innovator. And that's because what's happening is that you're trying to find other ways to solve for friction that you are finding in your daily life. And if you are that type of mentality, then you are already an innovator. It doesn't matter, large or small, your ideas will hit, and it's just about how you decide to execute on it. Um, in my position, a couple of struggles that I have had with innovation specifically is this this point to where you have a solution, right? You've architected an entire solution and it's good, and you've tested it and it's working, but you are also then being met with, the scope is too large, or we don't want this, or I'm talking about other, the other aspects, the people. So once you have your team of people, once you have the money people, the business people, like there's all sorts of different minds in there that are shaping this to where it must be marketable, it must be, what they deem as usable, it must be easy, it must be fun. There's a lot of these buzzwords, and then you're starting to then try to take what you have to fit that mold, and it becomes restrictive, and that innovation then can really go in a wrong direction. So I would have to say the most important thing with innovation is being able, again, with that rigidity, not be rigid and accept that feedback. Trust your team. If you decided to trust your team, if you decided that these are your people, and there's no toxicity here, then trust them that what they're having to say is valuable, and take that value and then keep going. And that's what ended up happening between Anne Marie and myself, was really this back and forth between, like, the vision that I was seeing, the problem I was wanting to solve. It was, me iterating a lot, working a lot with the AI, working a lot on back end, coding and trying to make something. And then that's when it was this beautiful dance between, this is good, but ask. And then she was able to ask very strategic questions. That's very important. Being, open to ask questions versus accusation. And it's like, why is it like this? Why is it like that? Why? And it's like, well, it could be like this, or it could be like that. It's asking the questions and then utilizing all the things that you've done in your life. And you never know. This is what some of the greatest inventors, they're sitting there making some eggs, and something will happen, something will splash into the pan. And all of a sudden it's like, boom, that's it. That's the missing piece. And it really is like that, to where you're just solving these problems that you have, that you're encountering. If you're coming at it from that point of view, that's one way, right? That's one way to innovate. That's like the kind of like, I would say, the natural innovation. There's also people that are in positions to where they're constantly being asked to innovate on something living, or something that is already in play. Like, you work for Apple and you're part of the innovation team in Apple. Like, you're not somebody fresh, right? You're in a system that's already functioning. So you have constraints to your innovation, but at the same time you have a subject matter. It depends on your mentality type. Are you the type of person that when your English teacher told you to write an essay, were you the one wanting a thesis? Or were you the one who just wanted to free write and just be able to express yourself however you wanted to? Because these are two different types of innovators. So neither one are bad, both are necessity. It's just one is the entrepreneur, one is the trailblazer, one is, something, you're starting something from scratch. The other is the type of mind that likes to do something from a continuation point of view. Again, both are highly necessary. But they will both receive these types of challenges, where at one point you're going to be faced with overscoping. I think that is the greatest challenge to any invention and creation, is overscope. Project creep, overscope, not buttoning things up tight enough. It's that delicate balance between being able to fully realize your vision. It's also back to what you said. It doesn't all need to happen immediately. All good games and all good products have updates, features that get added. Get the core idea, the functionality, something that's edible, something that's, digestible, something that's fun, something that is the core and the meat of what you're trying to deliver. Have a great team that's supporting you. Be able to be honest with yourself and with them, and you can't go wrong. There is no failure, because at the end of the day, whatever you are creating, you're going to get feedback on. It's going to loop back, and this is all going to feed into something else. Even if you didn't hit that gold, if you didn't strike it this one time with your idea, it might be the thing that then feeds the next, big thing.
Yeah, a couple things that are super important. There is definitely this, well, it kind of all goes back to just being mindful of your journey, being mindful of the processes and the momentum that you're building. And, for some, right, when you have limited resources and capital and you're doing things in a way that isn't as fast as you'd like, or everything at once as you would like, you benefit from being transparent. And this also touches back on building in public, right?
Yeah.
It allows you
Yeah.
to be transparent with where you're at, with yourself, your team, the project, whatever it might be, and it allows people to see how they can play a role in that, right, in your journey, by being an early alpha tester, or maybe like if it's a video game on like Steam and it's like an alpha build, well, maybe you're like an early customer who's actually paying for that, but you understand that it's a process and you're involved in that process and you're willing to do that, you're giving consent for that, right? This also is like one of the problems that the bigger video games have, whether it's Starfield or Cyberpunk, where they weren't transparent, they were completely misleading in all these things, and they release a game which is still treated as if it's like an alpha release, right? And then these updates that they make are updates that they should have included in the original release, or they should have taken a different approach and just done like Larian and Baldur's Gate 3 was, make it part of an alpha release that's ongoing, that's listening to people, listening to their early customers to arrive at the best possible outcome with their help, right? So this is really, really important. But the other thing that you touched on that was really great was that mindfulness in your experiences you're having, and recognizing how, as an innovator, you want to create a solution to this frustration that you're experiencing first. And I think where a lot of founders go wrong, especially the ones that are rushing to be entrepreneurs for whatever reason, they're desperate for any idea and they're asking for other people for ideas, right? And this is usually like very dangerous territory because they don't have the experience or skill set to just enter any market and seize an opportunity that trends are showing them, and they end up building something that is completely out of context, makes no sense to anyone in the industry or market that would be utilizing that tool or product or service. And so, like you're saying, it's so important to just like practice up mindfulness, be aware of your frustrations and where that innovation is coming from. Dr. Paxmore added some fun stuff. A big long quote: while in a communist society where nobody has one exclusive sphere of activity, but each can become accomplished in any branch he wishes, or she, or they, and bees as well, society regulates the general production and thus makes it possible for me to do one thing today and another tomorrow, to hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, rear cattle in the evening, criticize after dinner, just as I have a mind, without ever becoming hunter, fisherman, herdsman, or critic. Interesting theme to build on with a lot of this stuff. Also, if you're able, participate in game jams. And if you're not, check them out anyway, specifically GMTKs. He does a review each year on YouTube, and here's a link to the review so people can check him out. Karl Marx was limited by... Sorry, a little controls blocking that. Let me copy and paste what that says. Karl Marx was limited by time in which he existed, by the time in which he existed, which is true too. Yeah. Timing's everything. Be aware of this.
Yeah.
All right.
I second that game jam. I mean, game jams are great. It was a great experience for me doing that. I was lucky enough to get into some indie studios that I still work with, and so I mean, it's all of it's good. It's all good.
Yeah, that's another thing that's lovely too. Is just this idea of bouncing around, and even if you have a career path in mind, like you want to be a game, designer or a background, designer in gaming, or you want to do something else. You want to be a photographer, right? That's your dream. That's your goal for your career path. It's
Yep.
still incredibly valuable to jump around to different employers because every employer is going to be doing certain things drastically different, even though every business does the same thing, right? Sales or marketing or onboarding, whatever it is. They have their own way of doing it, and it's going to help you develop new perspectives, new tools, new understanding of what may or might not work in different situations. And the same thing too, like, engaging in different hobbies. You have a lot of cool hobbies, a lot of cool hobbies. And so, yeah, every one of those is going to make you a better innovator because it's giving you drastically different ways of seeing similar processes or projects, how you manage a project or approach something, and just expand your tool set, which is amazing. And the most valuable thing you can do outside of building relationships, which is another thing you touched on. Those relationships, you never know what someone's going to be able to bring to the table to help you out with, whether that's an introduction to someone they know or sharing some insights. It's all invaluable, and having
Yep.
people that support you is the number one thing that you can do. And yeah, Lyla, we've been over time. You've been incredible. I don't want to keep you much longer. Do you have any announcements you'd like to share with the community? Anything you're working on?
Actually, yeah, that's fun. So yeah, obviously, I think coming into this podcast, I didn't want to change it. I don't know why. I had this desire to be like, I'm gonna leave it and I'm gonna talk about it when I get there. I'm not chief of staff, and like I mentioned earlier on in the podcast, that's actually a perfect example of how startups look like. You start off with one thing because my programmatic skills. Okay, I have a lot of many years, 15 plus years in programmatics, so that's where I started off, was organization, structure. But in reality, not in reality, but a massive aspect of myself is innovations, is programming. I've been doing it since I was a kid, and it's the things I do on the side, and it all came into it stemmed from my own needs. And when I met Anne Marie, Dreammore is a white glove recruiting service agency founded in Los Angeles, and they're they're not a massive corporation that sits there and goes through people like numbers. So they have a lot. The kind of data that they have is that qualitative data. It's 30 plus years of experience in these fields, and with tech, with business, with, I mean, you name it, she's touched upon it and built and started her own companies. So um, and as a result, I had access to countless files and humanistic sort of experiences. So the thing that happens here, the magic that happens here with what we're developing, is we know that fundamentally hiring is broken. I can't tell you how many times I've gone through this myself, and I'm sure everyone else can relate to where you're looking for a job and it ends up feeling a letdown. It's almost like looking like dating or something. You're getting turned down a lot, and I've met a lot of people, for them it's so demoralizing that they start asking why, or like what's not good. You keep trying to add these buzzwords, what's hot, what's not, and it's, again, it's not who you really are. So then you end up attracting, just like you would if you're trying to date somebody, the wrong kind of person, because you're advertising something that actually is not you. And so you're going to always be perpetually unhappy because you're always trying to tell the story that's not your story, in order to fit into what you think, that just for the sake of being wanted, just for the sake of getting the job. Okay. And here's the greatest mistake, is that you think you might know who you are. You think you might know what you want, but do you? Are you sure? Can you really say that? Do you really know? Have you taken that time? Are you being honest with yourself? Are you scared to know the truth? And these are the kind of things that I'm working with intelligence, with pre-quantum compute, and with what I'm developing as far as utilizing various metrics that, like Hertz voice. It's a voice centered application to where it's going to understand that pitch, that cadence, that variance, and pick up the things that maybe you're not honest with, even with yourself. and being able to own all this data for yourself. I'm always the most concerned about our data getting into their hands. It's really important for me. I cannot stand that. That will not be the future. I will not allow it to happen, is how I feel. And so I will do everything I can. I will do everything I can to make sure that we each own our own digital twins. And that's essentially what will need to happen because of all of this data grab. I was telling my friends, like, it's not free. If it's free, the product is you. Don't sell yourself. It's worth more than that stupid app. Trust me. So it's like, as they're sitting there, gaining, we talked earlier about marketing. We talked again about hitting that reptile brain. And that's essentially what they're going to be able to do. You think it's bad now. Imagine if they have a really nice, clear snapshot. Statistics show that humans are more forthright in LLM conversations than they ever have been, even with a therapist. It is that removal of fear of biased thought. The fear that they're going to judge me is removed because it's just AI. And therefore, they're allowed to be their most authentic human selves. Beautiful, except when it's used against you. When that information, as Anthropic dropped on the 28th, to where they will be training on all of your data, make sure you read those end user agreements. I stopped. It's like it's going offline. Like, I'm not touching that, and it's because it's going to sit there and train off of everything you have. And you're just basically giving them your soul. And then they will be able to very strategically just sell you all day, every day. And how does this work into what I'm doing? How does it work into jobs? It's everything and all the things. And what we're really working at is utilizing this 30 plus years of excellent, qualitative, humanistic data and applying it across the board for doing things like what you said earlier. It was so funny that you said this, and I couldn't wait to talk about this. You said you had been doing a lot of this photography. You'd been doing UX, UI. You didn't even know you were doing the job. You didn't have that. You didn't go to school for it. And that's part of this platform. It's the fact that you can uncover things about your life as you're just communicating. You're just journaling, you're communicating. And as a result, it can show you that, hey, look, this is actually who you are. And you're like, well, don't I have to go to school for this? And they're like, no, like, I can tell you no, that statistics show that people actually don't care. Like, if you're doing graphics design, where you graduated from, they want to see a portfolio. That's what they care about. What you can do. How can you showcase what you do? And so these are the solutions that we are providing at Dreammore AI on the B2C side and the B2B side, diagnostic tools that actually get real scope of work out. How miserable is it when you're hunting for a job and you look at the scope of work and you're like, what the hell is this? Like, what is my actual job? Like, what does this mean? There's a bunch of words and I'm just like, and it's a lot. They're usually asking a lot. You're like, I can do like a few of these things, but it's nonsense. It really is nonsense because HR department has written it. It's not actually the person who, whose job you'll replace. So they're not really even too sure. They talk to you, you're like, so what's my day-to-day look like? And there's like, read the scope of work. And you're like, or they'll just read the scope of work to you. So it ends up being a mismatch. And no wonder there's so many people disappointed in their jobs. They sit there, they're like, this is not what I thought it was going to be, and or they just like fling things at you. And you're like, I wasn't ready for this. And on the B2B side, they're upset. They're like, I thought we hired this person. Wasn't that scope of work clear? I thought that was a clear scope of work, And it's like, no. And then they're sitting there and everyone's disappointed at one another. Everyone's playing the blame game and nobody's happy. There's, nobody has the jobs they really want to do. Everyone's feeling unfulfilled. Everyone's fed up. It's broken. It's not working. And adding automation to a broken system just makes it happen faster. That's not the solution. So
Yeah.
so what we're developing is, the whole thing.
No, I love it because you touched on a couple of key things that are really important. And like, most of them don't understand the job that they're hiring for. A lot of people that are putting up those postings, and I see this a lot with the UX field, it's always UX UI.
Yep,
and
UX UI.
Yeah, and they're two separate fields with two different roles and functions. And they're conflating the two and asking, here's like, the job description of like, what to expect. And it's like all over the place and it doesn't make sense, especially when it's like more specifically supposed to be a UX role. And it's like, no, that's not UX at all. That's all UI. That's a UI role. What are you doing? Right. And then, this other notion where, it goes back to like them not playing video games, right, at a video game studio, right? It's just like it's such a misunderstanding of responsibilities and everything. And often, a lot of times, these people are trying to hire people without understanding the job, without having the proper documentation, like like training manuals, operation manuals done, and having people that are actually in those roles help them craft what is necessary. It's just like,
Yeah,
yeah, copy paste, copy paste. Oh, I found a posting for a UX, person. I'm gonna copy and paste that. It's good enough,
literally.
right? And so yeah, you get all these mismatches, and that's one of the things that I think is overlooked when you're a business operator or a founder, and this goes to like any aspect of the challenge of overcoming adversity and making things happen, is that at the heart of what you're doing, it's matchmaking with the correct people, the correct resources, the correct partners, investors, whatever it is, the correct customers, right? And it goes back to understanding yourself first, and that's like the most important thing, and then building on that. So it's really beautiful what you're talking about, and your approach and how you're rethinking about this widespread problem across the whole industry when it comes to hiring and recruiting and all this. So it's really great. Yeah, like yeah, Dr. Paxmore says, like your examples once again, the creative writer who doesn't like to read, like these people who are in charge doing these things. Yeah, so good. So yes, love to
That
talk,
that
Jorge. Awesome. Thank you for checking in over on LinkedIn. Oh, real quick, Lyla, you have a question from Jorge. You mentioned that you are working on a voice app that can recognize emotion tone of voice. I'm interested in this, and I'm currently working on a sales coaching training app. Are you currently able to detect emotion tone in voice? So with this, yeah, what you're building out, is that possible? Are you looking into that when it comes to like the
Oh no,
tonality?
yeah, it's built out. It's fully possible. Um, there's a lot of it's more than just that. I really did oversimplify it. I'm often told don't go into the sausage because I can overwhelm with technical stuff. Once I get started there, it's my favorite space to be. So talking tech is like I start salivating. So that would have to be another deeper conversation to where if you were going to open me up that way, it'll be another hour and I'll black out and then things will happen. But it'll be like the Saiyan moment, Super Saiyan. But yes, it is entirely possible and then some. Does that spark your curiosity?
We'll see, but yeah, I'm saying like yeah in the chats, like yeah, that's a huge wisdom drop right there. And this too is like when you have technical founders, or really any founder who's been living and breathing their project like every single day and hyper aware of everything that they're trying to accomplish, what could go wrong, what they want to go right. It's so easy to just like dump and just keep dumping on someone and talking at them, and it's a disservice to you and what you're trying to accomplish, especially in your networking situations, right? That could be at like you're standing in line at an event, a tech event, and you're getting pizza, and you start talking to someone, and a lot of people want to do that their elevator pitch, and their elevator pitch turns into you rambling at someone for like 10 minutes when they're like, okay, I got my pizza now, I gotta go, right? Instead of
Yeah.
it being high level like what you did and keeping it like super simplified, easy to understand and follow. So then you get someone like, like Jorge going, oh, this is amazing. I want to know more. And it gives you that opportunity to then get into all the details and just dump into all that stuff. Yeah, so it's really great that you presented it that way and also shared like like this self awareness of how you can do that, because I do it, most other people do it, and
Yeah.
it's something yeah to kind of be aware of and cut back on. So thank you for that. Jorge says, "Cool, yes," and we got some yeah, Pika or Piku Petrichor. Again, I'm so bad at pronouncing stuff and reading, but
You're messing up all of the what's it called? Gotta catch 'em alls.
yeah, I
All of
know.
the
I didn't play Pokemon. I missed that wave, unfortunately. But yes, they say lost in the sauce, and then Dr. Paxmore adds the pizza sauce. A fun little
they're
thinking
having some fun.
emoji.
They're having too much fun.
Yeah,
That's illegal.
that's so great about the Twitch chat versus like the other ones. Get a little more fun with all the crazy emojis. But yeah. Okay. All right. So we're gonna go. If you got any last bits of advice you want to leave on, now you've shared what you got going on with Dreamore AI. Sorry,
Yeah.
again. I'm reading like 400 chats. This I don't know how people do this like legitimately every day, especially like big streamers. They're just like a million things flying by them. Like somehow they catch really important stuff hidden in
Well,
there.
there's also things you can do with that. You can solve for that is you can look at this keyword and bold and highlight as it comes out. There's a little script I wrote that might help you. So in other words, if you want to look out for certain specific things to pop out, I'm not sure if that's what they use, but that just instantly popped in my head as a solution. If I see so many things and if I would want to solve for that, I'd want specific key terms highlighted. So, you know, you could you could choose specific keywords that you're looking for and maybe make them extra big.
I love it. Once this gets a little more popular and it becomes like a crazy parade of text, that'll be
Uh-huh.
super helpful. And
Yes.
I'll get some time with you so we can get that figured out.
Excellent.
But this is
We'll have
just
that.
like this is more static chat and just
Yeah.
I get overwhelmed easily. So yeah, so I appreciate everyone's patience and dealing with this. But yes, so yeah, let's get if you have any final thoughts that you want to share with people, whether it's related to anything we talked about or anything that didn't come up, I'd love to hear it, and I'm sure everyone would love to leave on that note.
I think at the end of the day, we can always talk around and about everything and anything. We can, stretch our minds and collaborate and beat our heads down to try to figure things out in life. But I think that there's something really important to remember is that when we all feel overwhelmed and when we talk about existentialism, we always just seem to go back to those creature comforts. Whether it's your favorite TV show you're watching, like I Love Lucy or something, just for like the repetitive motion of childhood, or swaddling yourself in a warm blanket on a cold day, and or that video game you just want to get cozy to and eat your favorite food when you do so. Those like allocations, those memories, those feelings. I think that at the end of the day, if we just recognize that we're all just those little humans and maybe take it easy on ourselves and on everyone else. I just, that's my greatest. If I could spread that 1,000 times over, wouldn't that be great?
I love it. You've been an incredible mentor with immense wisdom and insight shared, and the overarching theme of being human, having fun, being passionate, being authentic is deeply appreciated. And so, yeah, thank you for getting that out there and hopefully inspiring lots of people and getting them on a more healthy, fun path for them. Um, yeah, this has been wonderful. So I hope you'll come back
Likewise.
and hopefully, yeah, we'll hang out over at Dreammore soon, especially with
Oh,
all
I'm
like
sure.
tech week or
Tech
what
Week,
LA?
Tech
Yeah,
Week
tech.
LA.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
the 17th, we got an event, and then we're going to do a hackathon the next day. So
Oh,
it
sick.
will be
All
fun.
right,
Yes, I hope to
maybe I'll
meet
have
you.
to come hang out with the hackathon.
Definitely. I'll bring the Steam Deck uh with the hookups.
Awesome. Okay, so with that, thank you
All right.
everyone for tuning in. Thank you so much for being a
Thank
great
you.
mentor.